Welcome back to the Breakfast Connect show on Africa Business Radio, the one show that gets you started each morning with the news in business, market, and the economy. Of course, our conversation today has been around startups and their ability to wield the power of technology. And the truth is, those that do not embrace technology risk being left behind, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. In order for them to stay afloat, entrepreneurs, startups, MSMEs, they need to start off strong with digital tools. Well, in our guest segment today, I'll be having someone from a renowned startup studio that co-hosts high-growth digital startups. Here's the founder and managing partner at CeedCap, Kessiene Majemite, joining me for conversations this morning. Good morning, Majemite. Thank you so much for making our time to do this with me today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me, and I hope we have a great time.
Indeed. All right. So basically, CeedCap, you guys build companies that are able to transform traditional processes and move them into the digital economy. But just for background, tell us more about CeedCap. What is it you represent, and what exactly is your target market?
Right. Thanks once again for the interesting introduction. And, many years ago, when I was very early on into my career as an entrepreneur, I've had the opportunity to build companies and work with several entrepreneurs along that journey. And one of the few things that I've found is that not only is access to capital one of the most talked about problems when it has to do with venture building at the very early stage, but one of the things we've also been able to identify is that the system that is required to build from the very early stage and to move the founders and the companies to where they become sustainable enough to go into the market and also to battle out the competitors and to emerge as a winner, which most often time we refer to as rhinos. Rhino being the concept of unicorns that are quite a fairy tale to us Africans. And rhinos are very relatable. They've been here for many years. They're very rare and extinct. And so we kind of associate success with some of the startups as rhino, given the target market that we're looking at. But that's to give you context of, how we see the startup ecosystem in Africa, and at the same time, how we venture starting Seed Capital. So Seed Capital, as you said, we are a startup studio. Most people refer to us as a venture studio, but they're one and the same. Mm-hmm. The studio is an asset class that functions as a hybrid between, accelerators and incubators. But what makes startup studios a bit unique and different is the fact that studios are very hands-on. And the goal of startup studios are to essentially reduce the waste in building a new company, especially when we have a deterministic objective for the target market that we're looking at. And CeedCap essentially uses a startup assembly system for building and investing in Africa's digital economy. What that means essentially is that we look for ideas within very interesting middle market opportunities. Middle market opportunities exist between value chains of either traditional or digital processes. And within those processes, we know that there are opportunities for either digital transformation or innovation. So by looking at those markets carefully where technology can, play a big role in helping, not just economy move forward, but also helping people's life better, we specialize in finding those type of opportunities and finding founders who are building for those type of opportunity. So when you look at it, CeedCap is also a middle market enabler, whereby bring the opportunity and the founders who are, very resilient in building solutions for those challenges or for those opportunities that we've identified. And we back them not only with the financial resources, but we back them with teams of venture builders and resources that they need to increase the time, that they would spend experimenting an idea, and also to reduce the launch rate time. So when you combine all of these things I've said into one sentence, what CeedCap represents is usually an assembly line system that helps founders to experiment on their ideas, build them very rapidly, and then launch them into the market with the right financial support and human capital support that we provide as a startup studio. I hope that is not too long of a...
That's detailed enough. All right, so quite interesting there. It's been about CeedCap for me the past couple of days since I knew I was going to have you on the show. And I saw that CeedCap became the first African startup studio to join the Global Startup Studio Network. That's GSSN. How has this helped the venture company in its goal to becoming the leading venture builder impacting investors in Africa?
So the GSSN membership for us was a step in the right direction sometime in 2019, I think. And we started conversing with different ecosystem members whom we felt that what we do and what they were doing sort of have like areas of mutual alignment. And given that the startup studio asset class is quite a new extension of startup enablers, and also, not only is it new globally, there are very few people who fully understand what the startup studio can offer to early stage founders. A lot of people are familiar with the concept of accelerators and incubators. So we needed to obviously position ourselves in such a way that we can differentiate from the different players in the ecosystem, not differentiating by recognition alone, but differentiating by sharing the same practices, standards across board that, studios across the world also emulate and use. It started out for us when we joined several forums and conversations with global studio leaders across the world, just sharing ideas and sharing insights that we've learned also from building companies here locally, and also taking what they have been able to learn and do by themselves too. GSSN represents that community for very focused studios across the world. You have likes of eFounders, likes of PSL, these are very well-known startup studios with over billions of dollars in valuations of companies that have rolled out. Some of them have even sold companies that have come out of the studio. And so for us, it was very, very important that we not only associate with this league of players, but we are also recognized as one of those leagues of players here in Africa.
Right.
So that has been a very interesting milestone for us. Not only has it opened us up to international investors who are paying attention to the studio asset class, but also to some of the initiatives and projects and also ventures that we're rolling out of the continent has gotten some global attention and interest from these different ecosystems that we function in.
Wow. All right. So every single day now, we see new brands being launched in the marketplace. I mean, these brands have to compete with long-standing companies, millions of marketing campaigns. And for startups, the only hope of being successful in the marketplace or in marketing better and more efficiently than these old businesses, would be more resources, more budgets. I mean, all startups have limited budget, which means that they have to, make the most of their limited finances in reaching customers and developing revenue. So does CeedCap help startups better, manage the situation?
Yes. So you've clearly outlined, all the different challenges that, keeps us up every night, especially how we can ensure that, the founders we work with and the ventures we build do not go through some of these challenges, or we can almost reduce the impact of these challenges as they build to launch. And as rightly said, it's true that startups and early stage entrepreneurs go through very, very, almost, I'm trying to find the word to express this thought, but I'll come back to this. Now, I want to touch on the point of competition and long-standing brand. One of my favorite quotes by Jeff Bezos is that, small companies that are very, dogmatic and resilient in how they look at the problems, in the long run have the opportunity to beat the incumbent, organizations that have been at the same problem, because the advantage of startups are the speed at which they can move, the speed at which decisions can be made, and the speed at which they can disrupt, existing systems or legacy systems that are not necessarily solving the problems in the way that the human needs have evolved. And so once we understand how our startups are able to address these problems, we don't feel so threatened about existing corporations. As a matter of fact, we do have programs such as the Corporate Innovation Program that allows us to work with existing organizations that has been around for years, just to better understand how, our founders can work with them to innovate faster, which is a very huge opportunity that we'll bring to the table. And this sort of partnerships, right, helps us to access resources, especially when we're trying to break into new markets fast. Those partnerships do come in handy. We also go to manage this situation further by ensuring that the resources that are, excluded from the essential idea. What makes a startup is an idea that, a founder has or, a company like ours have. But beyond the idea is the strategic execution of these ideas. And one of the key values that we bring to the table for entrepreneurs is that we can help you execute your strategy, not only with excellence, but with the technical know-how and the expertise of building businesses over many years. And we combine that with our pool of, funding that allows us to inject the right capital at different phases of the businesses till they get to a point where they become independent enough to raise their own capital and also to move to the next stage of building their own businesses. So, there are different initiatives that we run to ensure that we are one step ahead of the founder's challenge or the business needs, so that by the time we roll out these companies, we've essentially de-risked the process as much as possible and also increase the upside of success for these entrepreneurs or for these founders. Those are different areas that we sort of help entrepreneurs. We also have our own network, the Seed Connect network, where we introduce some of our founders and their businesses and make introductions on their behalf, try to connect them to, opportunities that exist that they might have not necessarily been aware of, or they do not have access to those opportunities. Pretty much what a standard venture capital firm we offer to, their investments to see that they nurture them till they become very successful. So we don't do so much that is different from that. But one of the things that we bring in that I think is very critical to mention is the fact that we are fast in how we execute this strategy, given that we use, this proprietary assembly line system to, churn in and churn out activities that are relating to a startup at a time, and giving them a roadmap that is clear from start to execution, and plugging in all the resources that they need along the way to get to where we think they should be.
Right.
So yeah, those are ways that we've been able to manage it so far.
Beautiful. So talking about execution and funding from the part of CeedCap now, typically how much capital do studios put into ventures they work on? You mentioned initiatives as well. Would you like to tell us more about what kind of initiative or how you go about it?
Okay, so picking up from initiative, one of the initiatives that we have currently is called the Builders Academy. The Builders Academy essentially is a 9 weeks program that we've designed. This used to be our selection process and criteria that we use in selecting founders that gets into the studio that we eventually build and invest with. But we felt like we wanted to find an efficient way as well to reduce the time it takes us to close out of any transaction that we might be interested in. As you know, investment processes differ and vary according to founders, but we designed the Builders Academy in such a way that it becomes the process or the program that helps us to filter the ideas and the founders that we build with. So in 9 weeks, not only do we prepare these founders for investments, we prepare them to launch their companies, and we prepare them also to understand the landscape of the business or the industry that they're building for. And so by the time this 9 week period is completed, it's more or less an automatic pathway to the studio based on the most promising venture that went through that 9 weeks program with us. Now, in terms of the capital that we deploy in these companies, while they are at the Builders Academy, obviously we provide venture building resources as well as venture builders. And when we say venture building resources, one of them, for example, is with the network of partners that we have alongside the Global Startup Studio Network. our founders do have access to $1 million worth of venture building perks in terms of credit and tools that they need to build, which obviously collapse the initial cost of just running the business. We also do provide early stage equity-free, investments to enable them to validate this concept and before it becomes a proper business that we take into the studio. When this business moves from that phase to the studio, which is usually a pre-seed round, we make pre-seed rounds between the range of $25,000 to $150,000, depending on the capital requirements of the startups. And at the same time, after the pre-seed round, we also help the startups to lead the seed round so that they don't just get stuck in one phase, but they get to the next phase where they have enough capital to meet PMF, which is product market fit, and also sort of like build themselves into a renowned company that attracts investors at the later stage. So in summary, we come in at those three phases, which is the very early phase to design the business, to understand, the opportunity and providing founders with a room for experimentation. And then once we're clear on that business and the objective, as well as, the impact it can make ultimately, we move them into a pre-seed round, which pre-seed round for us is where we make those capital and as well help them with follow-on funding afterwards through network of VC partners that we work with or angels within our network.
Is there like a specific time frame within these three phases?
Yeah, actually, one of the things that makes startup studios interesting is, like I said, I've used this word severally. It's the deterministic approach that we use in looking or evaluating the businesses that we build. We've come to realize that there are two ways to build companies, right? So you are either building as an innovative or a disruptive company, or you're building a company, still it could be very innovative and disruptive, but you're building for a very fixed problem, a problem that exists, a problem where the market is clear, and you're just rolling out this product to ensure you can solve them properly. What we typically want to achieve is that by the end of 12 months, these companies that we bring in from day one should be able to move to a seed stage round where they become Spinout and become independent. So after 9 weeks, they come into the studio where we build together for another 6 months period to raise the pre-seed to the seed stage. And then another 6 months where we just help them, with maybe, recruitment related issues, getting the team structure, providing governance and some sort of like advisory services, see they can, stand on their own. And then sometimes this could also extend, from 12 months up to 18 months, but we usually work with all of our founders and these companies to acquire our support, but very focused, 0 to 12 or 18 month window. We are still very much hands-on in terms of the support services that we provide to founders. That's
great. So 12 to 18 months. So let's say after 12 to 18 months, these founders are prepared and they're ready to go. What happens after they spin out from the studio?
Well, so the spin out is more or less, it's just a word to describe that this startup is now independent. They've raised external capital out of CeedCap's fund. They now other board members, and now they need to operate as a separate entity irrespective of CeedCap's contribution, and we might no longer have huge influence into the decisions or the direction. But we believe that we provided is enough for them to keep going and learning on their own. But we never really think about it like it's a separation. It's more or less like a structure that they now have, and they no longer depend heavily on the studio's resources to remain functional. Yeah, that's what the spin-out process is. And in terms of value, most startups that reach the spin-out phase have either, raised, like I said, external round of capital where CeedCap as a studio exits its own investments if it deems fit, or we continue to also hold on to our investment in those startups if we also feel very, very confident about the future, the value that they're going to create for us as well as our own stakeholders.
Right. All right. Now the big question, which I saved for last. How can entrepreneurs get engaged with CeedCap, and really why should they even, choose a startup studio, especially now?
For now, I think it's a no-brainer for founders who are very, passionate about a problem that they want to solve. One thing about building a company is that we're trying to rewrite the notion of founding a company. As a founder, it not only is a very interesting and exciting experience, to build something from scratch and to get it to the market and put it in the hands of the people you built them for. But to build that company to become, what the founder sees in his own mind or in their own head, it requires, like I said, strategic execution. We all know that ideas are worthless, execution is king. So why a studio sort of like exists is to help founders design an execution roadmap. Execution roadmap that reduces the time that they use in guessing and making assumptions around, market uncertainties or whatnot that sort of hits into the little pile of cash that they're bootstrapping with. And then obviously building a company is typically like a 5 years journey if you think about it. And the foundation is very, very important. Important from the people you recruit, the people that you bring to the team, those whom you even take money from at the early stage can make or mar a business. So why the studio exists really is to provide those same infrastructure that you would have found in a co-founder, but more, because you have a lot of solo founders who wouldn't want to have co-founders with them along their journey, either from experience or whatnot reasons that they might have. A studio can be seen as an institutional co-founder or a corporate co-founder that is doing all of these several tasks that, you would have wanted in a very experienced co-founder. Beyond that is also this understanding that we are building a business. So we take away the concept of just building something because it's what's building or I can build this, to saying every business exists for commercial reason as much as they exist for long-term, sustainable environmental and social impacts that it can make. We help these businesses very early to design how they will hit those objectives in the immediate 12 months, in the immediate 18 months, and how they can sustain that moving forward. Also, another key benefit that I do think is the access that a studio provides. Access in what sense? It's not just about introducing you to new markets or new investors or even corporations and whatnot. It's the access to understanding what the market is saying, who is moving the market, who are the right people to negotiate with or to talk to. So all of those headaches that you would have as a founder in the very beginning, we absorb that in a structured manner so you can focus on what really matters, which is the business, that idea, and keep refining it and ensuring that the vision that we as a studio see that made us, commit to bet on that particular founder does not diminish based on the logistical or operational resources and strategy that they need at the very early stage. And finally, obviously, is the fact that when we bring this to the table, we don't bring it at the same level of an amateur or something. We bring it at the level of experienced teams that understand what it takes to build companies. So that, I think, aside from the financial benefits, obviously, is a great way to reduce the overhead costs of starting a company for founders. We think we've been doing so well so far. And the model has been gaining huge traction, not only locally, but as well as on the global front. Yeah, this is indeed a great platform for startups, Majemite. I'd really like us to, have further conversations around startup and digital growth much later, maybe in another podcast. Maybe it would be great to have you on again, if that's okay. Yeah, definitely. It's always a pleasure sharing about startups. I've been in this space for, almost 15 years and, actively involved in building one thing or the other with different founders or building side projects or funding one of them or something. So amazing. Well done to your team as well. And it's been my pleasure. Thank you. Thank you. It's been great having you on the show. And that was Majemite. He is the founder and managing partner, CeedCap. The Breakfast Connect show continues in just a moment. Stay with us.